A new threat is headed for your network. Are you prepared? What if the threat evolves? What if it multiplies? What if it's harmless? Or so it seems. And what if it's something no one's ever seen before? The guessing game is over. Deep learning is here, at the core of the new Intercept X. A quantum leap beyond basic machine learning, Sophos Deep Learning uses neural networks with the power to memorize every known threat that has ever existed. Processing that information with unparalleled accuracy and speed. It identifies known and unknown threats, even future threats. And as it identifies each new threat, it gets smarter and faster, continually learning, continually predicting, continually protecting. The guessing game is over. Deep learning is here.
Hi, I'm Bradley. I'm a member of the sales engineering team at Sophos, and I'm here to talk to you today about Sophos Intercept X and EDR. So, Sophos, as you well know, are an endpoint security vendor who also sell other security products such as firewalls and ancillary products for mobile encryption and the like. Sophos have been working for a very long time to introduce next gen to the masses and also build everything into a platform that we've called Sophos Central, which is all of our Sophos products manageable from one pane of glass in the cloud. So we've done that with everything, as you can see from this graphic here, and we've tried to improve the security posture of all of our products by ensuring that they can talk to each other. And this is a solution that we've coined as synchronized security. So what this means is that all of our security products are talking to each other, they're exchanging data, and they're making sure that they can act in the best way for your security. So for an example, our endpoint and our firewall products can talk together so that if an endpoint detects something or is flagged as being unsafe, so its health status goes into an unhealthy state, the Sophos firewall can be configured to reject network connections from that endpoint, meaning that if your endpoint is infected and there is an active attacker on that endpoint, the firewall can stop lateral movement, so it can stop that attacker from moving around on your network, getting to those key network resources and attacking your data. If we take a different use case, Sophos Mobile and Sophos Wireless, for example, so Sophos Mobile being our UEM solution that allows management of corporate and BYOD devices, as well as control over the security posture of those devices, and our Sophos Wireless product that allows cloud management of Sophos branded access points. If a mobile is found to be non-compliant, so someone's rooted it or the antivirus protection is out of date, then the Sophos Wireless can be configured to reject those devices, to actually mean that they cannot access the corporate Wi-Fi network. And we're building this into everything we do. We're making sure that synchronized security is key. A lot of vendors are trying to play catch up with us, but we were there at the advent of this. And something that is very key to Sophos that is worth mentioning is Sophos Labs. So Sophos Labs is our threat research group and our group of global analysts that spend all their time manufacturing the data and manufacturing the rules, manufacturing the machine learning engines that all of our products build on. And there's something somewhat of a unique within the industry. Of course, other vendors have their solution which who are writing rules and doing those detection work, but Sophos Labs are key within the industry. They are a member of a few different industry bodies in regards to sharing data. They also are closely aligned with MITRE, so working on identifying vulnerabilities and how we can protect customers from them. So why do we think our solution is so good, and what is actually the threat landscape that we're dealing with here? So Sophos Labs see about 400,000 new malware samples a day. I think that number's even increased in the last few months. But 75% of those 400,000 samples are only seen once So they're seen 0 day, they're seen initially on a customer's estate, they're never seen again. So what that means is actually cybercriminals are doing an awful lot of targeted attacks against people. They're manufacturing malware just for one attack, which is where we start to see some problems with these traditional antivirus solutions that rely on signature detections, rely on pattern matching, rely on saying we've seen this file, so now we can detect it again, or we've seen this file, so we can now detect something in the same family. That doesn't work anymore because a lot of these files we've never seen before. So those traditional antivirus products are starting to struggle. And that's where solutions such as machine learning come in, or heuristic detection, and of exploit prevention and other ways of dealing with these threats. And that's what we found key, and that's what we've worked into all of our next-gen portfolio. On top of this, and you must have been living under a rock to not know anything about ransomware, we did a survey in 2020 and found that 1 in 2 organisations had been hit by ransomware. So effectively there was a 50% chance, 1 in 2 coin toss, of being hit by ransomware that year. And 75% of those people interviewed who had been hit had lost data due to cybercriminals encrypting it. So they're big numbers. Would you accept a 1 in 2 chance for anything you did? I know I wouldn't. So why do it with your security systems? So we've got some solutions for this. Great news. And here are the offerings that we offer for endpoint. So during this demo, we're going to discuss InterceptX, which is our endpoint protection solution, and is well renowned as being the world's best protection you can get for an endpoint. We're also going to touch on EDR, which is a great visibility tool for security analysts to do threat hunting, threat research, and also for IT administrators to do general IT admin tasks and SysOp tasks. I'll cover that later on. The third wheel in this is Sophos Managed Threat Response, which is a service that we provide, which can do these parts for you, can improve your security posture for you, can monitor for you. You effectively hire our security operations team. I'm not going to touch on this in this demo, but there will be additional demos where we touch on this. So I made a big claim that InterceptX is the world's best endpoint protection, and we're confident about that. And this is why. So over the last few years, since InterceptX came out, we time after time hit these industry accreditations. So we've got AAA award from SE Labs, #1 protection for AV comparatives, Editor's Choice in PC Mag, and also in those more analyst-driven things such as Gartner and Forrester, we're always in that leaders quadrant, always on those leaders' sides. So we are well renowned as being the best protection you can buy for an endpoint or a server. And that's backed up because we have done an awful lot of work into artificial intelligence and machine learning. Our version of this we've coined as deep learning, and effectively this is where every next-gen solution needs to go if they want to keep track. So this deals with zero-day threats, this deals with unknown threats, and because of the way that we've built this engine, it's on the machine at all times. So some of our competitors, some other vendors require you to be connected to the internet to lever their machine learning model. No. For us, it is on the machine and it's small. It's under 20 meg. But also this deep learning AI that scans each and every file sample against about 4 or 5 million other samples because we've got that machine learning scalability in there as well. So harping on with us being the world's best protection, why is that? It's because we have these different layers of protection. So we do have that foundational detection. We do have those static detections for those threats that we've seen before. And the reason we continue to use this, as well as our next-gen solutions, is for those old threats that are coming back. So 20 years ago, we'd have been talking to you about Visual Basic. We'd been talking to you about macro attacks and those Win32 macros that have been embedded into documents. And they went away for a long period of time, but they've actually come back in recent years. And that's because everyone's moving to next gen, everyone's dealing with the latest and greatest. So there's actually a gap where cyber criminals can bring those old attacks back in, and there's no protection in next gen solutions for it. So we still have that involved. We still offer protection against those. Next to that, obviously, deep learning we've discussed, where we do that machine learning scanning of a file against so many other different samples. And it's really good at catching zero-day threats and those unknown files that we've never seen before. I'll skip anti-ransomware just for now and talk about anti-exploits. So I say there are new 400,000 samples a day that we see within Sophos Labs, but we know there's only 17 or so different ways that any of those files can exploit a machine. So with our anti-exploit technology, what we've done there is introduced a guard against all of those different ways that an exploit can happen. So even if something gets past our foundational detection and gets past machine learning and starts to try to actively exploit your machine, we've got another foothold there to block that. And finally, we've got anti-ransomware. So as I said, ransomware is the biggest news at the moment. It is the biggest thing going on in the endpoint space. And we offer a robust solution for that. So what you would have heard about ransomware, the biggest thing you'll know about is those attacks where all of your files get encrypted, a really badly worded note pops up on your desktop which has been translated from Russian, demanding Bitcoin in exchange for decrypting your files. So we protect against that with CryptoGuard, where we are monitoring every file write on your estate. We're monitoring every file that is written, and we're taking a backup of that file. If there's no malicious activity, we get rid of the backup so we don't use up all your disk space, but we're doing those just-in-time backups to protect you. And if there is some malicious behavior detected, we detect that something is encrypting in a certain way, we'll let it run for a bit because we're secure. We've got those file backups. We can see what the encrypting software is doing. We can monitor it, we can report it back to you, we can report it back to Sophos Labs. But then as soon as we've got enough data, we terminate that process, we roll back all the files that have become encrypted, and we alert you. So your files are safe, you're protected, and we've gained some more data so that in the future we can protect you even better. Something of a new age ransomware attack that's happening now is in regards to encryption of the master boot record. So effectively at this point in time, the cybercriminal has encrypted the boot information on your machine. So your machines can no longer boot. They cannot boot into Windows. And you will still get a message demanding Bitcoin, but your full disk is encrypted. You cannot access any of your data to even try and recover it. So what we do is we monitor with WipeGuard every single change that is processed for the master boot record. If it is malicious, if it is of an encrypting data, we block it and we inform you. So just to illustrate the different layers within an endpoint solution, within our endpoint solution, these are all the different layers that we can offer within Sophos Central. However, if we think about what we were talking about before with those traditional antivirus vendors, this is all they can offer. So yes, you've got web control in here, device control, so you can monitor peripherals being connected. You've got some heuristic detection, so we can check for things that are like families of malware. You've got other things here, you can block files. But you've got about 50% of the protection that we can offer as a whole. If we talk about Intercept X Advanced, which is what we would suggest as our base level, we wouldn't suggest that anyone has a level of security less than this. Then we have all those bits that were already highlighted, but we also have deep learning. We have that machine learning engine in here. We have anti-ransomware technology. We have credential theft, so that LSAS dumping can't happen. They can't steal your credentials. We have botnet traffic detection, so we can check if your machines have been connected to a botnet, so they're talking to command and control servers. And we've got some root cause analysis so that we can give you information on what happened so that it doesn't happen again. You'll notice that this bottom right-hand corner is missing from this, and these are components that are built into our EDR platform, our Endpoint Detection Response platform, which I'll go into a bit later, and they just give you additional visibility around what is going on in your machines. So let's have a look in Sophos Central itself. So some of you may have seen this before, some of you may not. I'm just going to log in here with my username and password. So Sophos Central is protected by multi-factor authentication. When you create your account, we will ask you to validate this. It's not enforced, but for some of the features that I'm going to show you, you will need multi-factor authentication enabled, and I'll point it out to you. So when we first log into Sophos Central, the first thing you'll notice is, as a sales engineer, I have everything here. Depending on your license, if you have a trial, you'll see all this. But depending on your license, this list will be pared down somewhat. The first thing you'll notice in Sophos Central is that we upfront give you a whole lot of alerts. So we warn you if there's anything you need to deal with. You could almost use this as your daily executive summary of what you need to do. But you'll also notice this is from all of our products. So, for example, I've got some alerts here from Endpoint saying that Heartbeat isn't being sent to the firewall. There's some issues here about firewall. But if we click into these alerts, you can start to see there's some detections here I might want to look into. There's definitely some ransomware being going on. Yes, there's some firewall stuff as well because my firewall is being managed by Central. My firewall is being managed remotely through this one pane of glass in Central as well. So something that's worth looking into here is what we do around visibility and auditing of people and devices. So if I click on this People tab, you can see a list of every user that is registered to this Sophos Central account. And this is every user that has either logged into a machine which has got Sophos Central installed or has been imported by Active Directory. And what we can do there, if we click into any of these users, we can start to see what machines they're actively logged into and what machines they're actively registered with, as well as a summary of events. We can get an idea of devices, and we can drill down into those devices here. We can also see what policies that user has applied. So if we've applied a user policy, we can see it here. We also get a list of events that's happened for that user, whether that be controlled application, malware detections, or something to do with something else. Within this user section, we can also specify groups. So you can see within here, I've specified a group of home users. We can also do this for example, work administrators or work users to be able to delineate and differentiate what policy we want to assign to what function. For example, finance might need their own policy. If I go into this devices page, we can start to build up an idea of what devices there are across our estates. So depending on what you're licensed for, this could be computers, mobile devices or servers. And when under here, we get an idea of the device, what operating system at a high level is on that device, what we've licensed it for. And obviously here we can add additional functionality. So if I wanted to add encryption to any of these machines that doesn't already have encryption applied, I could assign that here. We also get an idea of a last user and when that machine last checked in with Sophos Central. Additionally, under here, if we wanted to click into any of these machines, we can get some further information on what's going on. So if I use my Windows 10 VM here, we get a list of recent events that have happened on the machine. We also get when the machine last checked in and last updated, as well as the assigned products and versions. We can drill down even further into the exact versions required if there's troubleshooting needed, or you want to make sure that you are completely up to date. We get some further information around Firewall if that's assigned, as well as the computer group and operating systems as well. We can also look into various product-specific things, such as whether the device is encrypted. We can do some encryption recovery around this if you've opted into our full disk encryption. And also we can see if a computer is being managed by Windows Firewall or not. Additionally, under here we have the ability to control Tamper Protection. So our Tamper Protection ensures that the endpoint can't be removed from a machine without admin approval. Additionally, this also means that services can't be stopped or bypassed. We've recently added the capability for this Tamper Protection to be enabled during safe mode. The reason for this is we saw a lot of attackers starting to use safe mode to get around security software, not just ours. We've enforced this in safe mode so that we can ensure that even if an attacker manages to reboot a machine remotely into safe mode to bypass this, we're still there and we're still securing the machine. We can also get mobile devices under here if we've enrolled in our UEM solution, and we can also get an audit of the servers we currently have on the estate, as well as the features aligned and the operating systems on them. But we want to talk about endpoint. So if we click down into endpoint, the first thing we give you is threat cases. So these are root cause analyses of an attack or a detection on your estate. I'll go into these a bit later when we talk about EDR, but we let you drill down and see exactly what is going on. Additionally, down here, we give you extra information about web threats and other things that you may want to drill down into. But for now, I just want to give you an overview of what we offer within here. And policies can be applied per user group. So say you want to group all of finance into one group, or per device. So if you've got a kiosk machine that you always want to have the same policies on, you can apply that as a device policy. However, if you've got Jeff from finance who moves around and uses different machines, and you want to make sure that his policies follow him around, you can configure that within Sophos Central. You'll notice that within Sophos Central there's a base policy for everything that we do within here. And if I click into that, what the base policy is by default is ticked to use Sophos recommended settings. Everything's grayed out. We've defined these policy options for you. So these are not policy options designed to make Sophos look good in performance tests. These aren't designed to make it look good on the endpoint. These are designed to give you the best protection out of the box. So today you could go and download a trial of Sophos Central. You could protect a machine. You didn't have to do anything else, and instantly that machine has got our best protection on there. Obviously, you can untick this, and if necessary, you can toggle off any of these options. So if you've got that one piece of finance software that doesn't work with one little bit of Sophos, you could say for the finance group or the finance machines, just turn off that one bit of the policy. Obviously, you'd have done your own security posture investigations to see what risks there are there, but it's possible to do. If we have a quick look through the policy, I appreciate policies aren't always the most interesting part of a demo, but within here we have deep learning, so our machine learning engine, protecting against those zero-day threats. Live protection, which gets information from Sophos Labs if the machine is connected to the internet, just to provide extra context if needed. We have obviously real-time scanning for network shares and local files, as well as internet scanning. So if a user is trying to download a file, we scan it in flight, check it's not malicious before it completely downloads to the machine. We also block access to malicious websites and allow some configuration around detecting low reputation files. So remediation is something that we're pretty good at, and I know some vendors will just alert you as a detection and then they won't give any action. They'll expect you to clean up that file. Us, not so much. So automatically we will try and disinfect a file. We'll try and clean it up so that we don't lose that data, we don't lose that file for you, especially if it's an infected document or something such as that. If we can't clean up the file, we will quarantine that file. However, unlike traditional antiviruses, we don't just quarantine it in place. We don't leave it on the disk so that a user can access it or turn off the antivirus and then access it. What we do is we encrypt that file into an encrypted database file. So that file is removed from the location on disk, encrypted into a Sophos directory, and then stored within a secure database file. And what this allows us to do, other than just secure you by removing that file from play, it also lets us do some recovery. So if it is defined that file is not malicious, or it is business critical, or in the rare case there's a false positive, as soon as that file is marked as clean either by yourselves or by Sophos Labs, it is instantly restored. So there's no loss of data. You don't have to go trawling through your server backups looking for that one file that we've cleaned up to restore it back. Don't need to do that anymore. Under Runtime Protection, we have all our new age features. So we have CryptoGuard for ransomware protection, our WipeGuard functionality, as well as all of our exploits that we protect against. You'll notice a lot of the things here are highlighted in blue. So Sophos Intercept and Sophos Central are ever-evolving products. We're constantly adding new protection. We're constantly adding new detections to this as well, and new functionality. So you'll notice that anything highlighted in blue is only available on the latest version of Intercept X, or potentially only within an early access program. So you have the ability to join those early access programs to get early access to the next-gen functionality that we're adding in all the time. And you'll probably find from month to month, these blue banners will go away and a new feature will appear. And we're just constantly adding more protection to this. Additionally, under here you have the ability to do scheduled scanning and obviously add exclusions as required for your business. Something else we do, I mentioned earlier that we can configure the Sophos Firewall to isolate machines that don't have that security heartbeat and don't have that good health status. If you don't have a Sophos Firewall, you can configure the endpoint to do that automatically. So if a machine is infected or a service isn't running, so your security isn't as strong as it should be, a machine can isolate it itself until that is resolved. As soon as that machine becomes clean again, becomes green, becomes healthy, we can remove that isolation and then return to business as usual. So just a quick look through what else we offer as part of the endpoint. We offer Peripheral Control. So within the Peripheral Control, we can control various devices that may be connected to your users' machines. You can add exceptions here. So if you have got a particular brand or particular model of removable storage that you always use, you can exclude that model. If you have particular devices and you want to audit those devices, you can exclude on device ID. So you can ensure that what is being connected to your users' machines has either been accredited by you or is being controlled if it's not sanctioned. Additionally, you could also put this in a monitor mode to audit what your users are doing, what your users are connected to the machines. Under here, we also have application control. So within application control, you can build up a list of applications that you never want to be installed or run on your users' machines. So this is a whole heap of software, from anything from FTP clients to computer games to USB launchers or tethered connection tools if people are trying to bypass your network. And this can all be set per user, per machine, per group. Additionally, you can also specify that if you want anything added by Sophos in the future to any of these categories to automatically be blocked, that can also be selected within here as well. Again, you could run this in a monitor-only mode to get some auditing of what your users are doing. Or if there's an application not listed, you can request a new application to be added by Sophos Labs. We also offer data loss prevention, which in previous versions of our software was called data control. And this allows you to control the exfiltration of data from your network. So As a standard, we include some templates for general things depending on your region. Within the UK, we offer these. So, for example, we can automatically block bank account details in documents being emailed or being copied to removable storage. And this can be fully configured. You can create your own custom rules. You can create your own custom control lists. All of this is within the help file, but you can build up a very strong list of data that you don't want to leave your network. Also, if you have anyone in-house who's any good with regex, you can write queries around that if there's much more complicated data rather than strings that you want to make sure are not removed from your network. We also offer web control. So we offer you the ability to control what browsing your users can do. So whether you want them to download risky file types such as executables, whether you want them to only be able to access business relative websites, so you may not want them to access or anything to do with gambling, computer games, and of course you probably don't want them to access anything adult such as pornography or anything to do with drugs or any of these other categories here which definitely don't suit any place in the workplace. We also offer some control over the Windows firewall. So unlike previous versions where we've offered a fully featured Sophos firewall, we've had to concede that the Windows firewall has come on leaps and bounds in these recent years. So we do offer the ability to control the Windows firewall. So you can either monitor via Sophos Central, so we monitor for blocks, we monitor for allows, and we report on that, whilst allowing you to set your policies via GPO or via Windows Security. Or you can configure some controls within here as well. The Windows Firewall is obviously much more fully featured. We'd encourage you to investigate how you can use the Windows Firewall fully yourselves. So although we've been talking about endpoint, we also offer protection for servers. So these are servers either running a Windows operating system or also servers running a Linux. We do offer some protection for servers in virtual scenarios such as AWS, Azure, and GCP, but we won't be covering these as part of the demo. Within here, servers receive exactly the same protection as endpoints. So same level of threat protection, same level of peripheral control, application control, etc. One feature, however, that is unique to servers is server lockdown. This effectively allows you to lock a server in place, to effectively deep freeze it in time, from a time when you've prepared that server, every application running on that server you're aware of and you've sanctioned. And also you've got the admin tools on that server already required to perform any day-to-day business tasks. Because as soon as you enforce server lockdown, as I said, that server is effectively frozen in time. And from that time forward, no new applications can either be installed on that server, and nothing that wasn't sanctioned at the time that you lock that server is allowed to run. So effectively, even if there is a breach on your network, if something is placed on that server and attempts to run that wasn't there at the time of the lockdown, it cannot run. So your server is secure regardless of what else is happening on your network. Obviously, an important part of any management solution is the logging and the reporting that's on offer. So within Sophos Central, we offer 90 days of reporting. If you wanted to, you could integrate with a SIEM solution. We have full API control. So you could integrate with a SIEM solution and export as much data as you wanted and store it for as long as your retention policies for compliance require. However, built into Sophos Central itself is 90 days. And within under here, if I go up to the top level, you can get a full events report as to everything that has happened. And you can summarize this, so we could just look and see what application control has happened in the last 7 days, or last 90 days, or 30 days. There's some configuration there. These can be fully customized as to what you want to see. So I can look at Windows Firewall as well here. These can be exported. These can also be scheduled to run and emailed to you as required as well, if there's anything that you need for auditing or anything that you need for compliance. As I mentioned, we offer API connections, so we can do API connections into SIEM solutions such as Splunk. Additionally, we can also offer full control over APIs, and there's a burgeoning development community within Sophos community that are creating APIs for a whole manner of things, so I'd suggest you have a look at that. We also integrate with directory services such as Active Directory and Azure Active Directory, which allow you to import your users and groups to make sure that you don't have to recreate every single user within Sophos Central again. And you can apply those, you can obviously configure policies just for those groups as well. As you'll see under global settings, there's a whole load of information, there's a whole load of settings that we configured here depending on what products you've got, and these can all be investigated individually via a Sophos Central trial. Now, if we want to talk about EDR, because obviously we've covered the endpoint, an endpoint solution is an endpoint solution. Yes, okay, we do things very well. We do a lot of things around next-gen security, and we offer those extra functionalities such as peripheral control, web control, application control. But EDR is the next step on this, and EDR is that extra visibility into your estate. So a big problem at the moment is visibility is lacking, especially when it comes to security posture. So we did a survey in 2019, and we found that the average time for a threat to be discovered and then investigated is about 13 hours. And 68% of organizations were hit by a cyber attack in 2019. So obviously those numbers are quite big, and that time is quite large. And within 13 hours, an attacker can do an awful lot on your network. If you add on to that the fact that it took about 3 hours to remediate an incident for the average time, and an administrator is dealing with 8 potential incidents every month, that's quite a lot of time. That's almost 2 working days gone per incident times by 8. So that's already half a month gone. Bear in mind the administrators having to deal with everything else. If the printers stop working, they still need to investigate that while they're doing this. So we've thought about what we can do and how we can increase that visibility, and EDR platforms are good for that. So we're obviously not the only vendor in the market that offers EDR, but we think we've got some very key differentiators. So we don't think there's any point in having an EDR solution if you don't already have the best level of protection you can. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, Sophos is industry renowned as being the best protection for an endpoint. There's no two ways around that. We are the best protection you can get. And that helps because it helps limit how much data you're having to trawl through, which I'll touch on in a minute. Obviously, at the moment, there's a real problem with increasing headcount. There's a real problem with getting those skilled security workers into your team to be able to even offer an EDR solution, be able to trawl through all the data that an EDR solution creates. If you take on average the fact that a security analyst in London costs around £60,000, that's a lot of money. And obviously, you're going to need more than one to do this effectively. So what we've thought about is how we can offer EDR to the masses. How can we streamline the approach so that a smaller team potentially having to deal with other day-to-day tasks can still get benefit from an EDR solution? And we think we've done that within Sophos EDR. And as we were building it, we were obviously building it from a security perspective because it's what we do. We actually found that as well as that threat hunting, that threat analysis, and the extra bits you can do for security, it actually works really well as an IT administrating tool. So within here, you can search and see if a machine is out of date from its Windows patches. You can check the BitLocker status. There's a whole gamut of things you can do. And I'll go into that a little later when we look at it in person. So what does an EDR solution do? So traditional antivirus is really good at telling you what is good and what is bad. And then there's all this grey area in the middle. And that's the gap. That is the information where the files where we don't have the information to identify if something is good or bad 100%. So we don't have information as to convert them properly. And that's where EDR traditionally functions. And that's where you have to spend the time trawling through all those files and saying, okay, where did it come from? What's it doing? Has it got a good reputation, a bad reputation? Do I trust who it's been signed by? And that is a large amount of files, especially for smaller IT teams. What we do, because of the fact that we have the best protection, we are much more confident about how much is good and how much is bad. And we've shrunk that gap significantly to allow EDR to be used a lot more effectively. If you then add into that fact that we've bolstered EDR with machine learning capabilities and also with suggested actions for administrators, then we've actually increased the power of this quite a lot to ensure that you can spend your time investigating what you need to investigate rather than trawling through all that grey area. As I mentioned, we think that our EDR solution is great for security. We also think that our EDR solution is great from an IT operations perspective. And here's some common use cases we found. So if we're looking at it from a threat hunting perspective, you can have a look and you can see, okay, is something trying to connect on non-standard ports to my machines? Okay, a bit of an edge case, but it's possible. I can look for PowerShell executions using this tool, which is, especially as a lot of attacks now are distributed by PowerShell, is a powerful thing. We can check for unusual login attempts. So is Jeff from Finance trying to access the file server that you shouldn't, or access the system server, which you shouldn't be able to. And there's a whole heap of things that you can do there. But from an IT operations perspective, you could also see, okay, are all my files are on my disks encrypted? Are they all protected by BitLocker? Have all my Windows updates been applied? I can look for vulnerabilities, I can look for out-of-date versions of Windows or unknown certificates and do all this as well, which, yes, has a security point as well, but it's also a general IT admin task. Or just check, have I got machines that are running out of disk space? Because obviously that's going to impact business as usual as well. So all of EDR is housed within this Threat Analysis Center. And some of these features you'll get just with Intercept X Advanced. Some of them you'll get just with EDR, and I'll point them out as we go. So as soon as you access the Threat Analysis Center, the first thing you'll see is this list of threat indicators. And effectively, this is the grey area. This is that gap we're talking about. And these are the files where we don't have enough information to convict it as good or convict it as bad, but we do have some context to know that we would think it's suspicious in certain ways. So if I click into one of these, and thankfully I haven't got too many across my estate, you will start to see, we'll be able to start to build up a picture of this file. So we can see how many files, how many machines this has affected, and we can also request some data from Sophos Labs, which I'll show you shortly. This is only within EDR, this isn't available within Intercept X, but what we can do is, if there are 10 or 20 machines here, Sophos has indicated that this is a threat. We can click this clean and block button, and what that will do is will clean up any instance of that file on any of your machines already, and also we'll put a rule in place so if that file is ever seen again, it will be automatically blocked. If we go back to the Threat Analysis Center, we can see this list of threat cases. So as I mentioned before, this is every file, every detection on a machine will create a threat case to allow us to build up a root cause analysis of how that threat got on the machine and what it was doing just before it was run or at the time it was run. So if I drop into this threat case list and pick one, we can start to see this datagram here and some context here as to what was going on. This is all completely draggable, completely rearrangeable to make it easy for you to read. But what we can see at the top of the screen is this was detected on this machine. We can see that Office was involved. PowerShell was triggered at some point, and then a detection was occurred, and then we cleaned it. What we can see here is the detection name. So Sophos Labs are aware of this, and if you click through here, you would end up with some more information from Sophos Labs. The root cause, which in this case was Windows Word, and also the time it was detected and where, and what user it was associated to at the time. So down here we get a nice data graph of what was going on at the time of the alert. We can click through here and we get some additional context. So we can see that this indeed was Microsoft Office. We are 100% sure this was Microsoft Office. And if we look here, we can see that there was a macro-enabled Office document that was opened. Okay, that's a bit suspicious in its own right because we wouldn't expect macro-enabled documents to be seen in this estate, potentially. We can see that it then triggered Microsoft PowerShell, which indeed was Microsoft PowerShell, so there's no suspicion there other than the fact that PowerShell is being triggered. However, if we look down into this, we can see that the actual command being run was to run a ransomware install script from a remote location. So we've already built up a picture that this user has acquired a macro-enabled document from somewhere, has run it, and then the macro in that document has attempted to go out and install ransomware, which is where Sophos has stepped in, taken this HTML behavioral detection, the fact that ransomware is being downloaded, ransomware install file is being downloaded from a remote location by PowerShell from Office, taken all that context and go, block. This is bad, we don't want anything to happen here at all. This is an easy one to read. Some of these threat cases can become quite complicated. So if I take this one, for example, we can see that there's an awful lot happening at the time of this alert. But what we can do is we can switch this to just show the direct path, so we get a much clearer idea of what was going on. So in this case, the same machine, only to the same person, looks like it clicked a link in Microsoft Edge and tried to download this exe file, which was then detected as, again, a behavioral download for a malicious file. So if we click through here again, we can see this indeed is Microsoft Edge. You can see it was downloading a file. But then this process was spawned, this unknown process was spawned that tried to do something malicious. So we've requested some intelligence from Sophos Labs here to understand a bit more about this file. And we get a summary here as to why we think it is this suspicious. And that's because the machine learning analysis has brought back some attributes. So potentially this file isn't particularly suspicious. The code similarity to other malware isn't particularly high, but the path and the file itself is incredibly similar to known malware. And we can click through and we can get some more information about how many files it's compared against, why it has been convicted in certain ways. Additionally, you can also get some file properties. So has it been signed? Is it owned by a certain person? Are there some file versions and comments here? And then if we want to go deeper, we can start looking into some additional things as to what the various DLLs it's calling can do and will do as well, if necessary. So of course, again, we can clean and block this file. We can also do a threat search for this item. So we can search across the estate and see that this file has only ever been seen on this machine. But just as similarly, we can also go in here and we could run a threat search for anything across this estate to get an idea of what is installed on any of these machines. So if your bank has contacted you and say, we've been made aware of this attack, here is a whole number of indicators of compromise you need to be concerned about, you could easily search for SHA-256 or a file name in here and pull that back. And we can start to see within this list everything that is installed and running on these machines, so including PowerShell commands. So we can easily start to do some digging and start to do some threat research in here as well as isolating machines manually. So we've got that automatic isolation piece when the machine goes bad, but if we're wanting to stop a machine from being able to access network resources while we investigate, we can do some isolation there as well. So this is one part of EDR, and some of this is available within InterceptX Advanced. The root cause analysis is, but the additional data from Sophos Labs and these threat searches are all based within EDR only. But something new that we've added relatively recently is this Live Discover piece. So this gives you the access to almost 200 queries that are written using SQL, written using OS query to interrogate information on your active machines to see what is going on. So if I click into this all queries list, you can start to see the sort of things we're looking at. So we can look and see, are all my devices encrypted by BitLocker as they should be? What certificates have they got installed? What's the CPU information on these machines? So have I got any that are running really outdated processes? And there's a whole load of information here. So obviously a lot of these can be used as IT administration tasks. Have I got any out-of-date drivers? But then we start looking at it from a threat perspective and we say, okay, so have I got any login attempts that are failing that I want to look at? Are there any add-ons installed that I don't want to be? And these are grouped into categories for ease of use. So we have a number that are aligned to the MITRE ATT&CK framework to allow us to search for vulnerabilities across the estate, or we can have a look at processes. And one that I like looking at, and you can create your own of these. So as you see, I've created a few here. All you need is a bit of SQL knowledge, and we publish the schema for the databases to allow you to write your own queries. And again, there's a large group of people on the Sophos community that are writing these constantly and making them open to people. So one that I like using is this RDP-enabled devices. So we know that remote desktop connections are the main way at the moment that threats are getting into networks, RDP connections to the outside world. So what I would do here is be checking to see, okay, how many of my machines have got RDP enabled? So as you can see, here's the SQL query we're using, which is fully customizable. You can add anything in here as well if you edit it and go and create your own. We can then select the list of machines we want to run the query against. And then we can pull back some information from those active devices and see, hang on, my 2019 server, this got RDP enabled when it shouldn't. None of my servers should. Something we've added recently is the ability to be able to pivot. So this isn't a great example, but any of these files here, we can start to then pivot into other options. So for example, if we found that there was a malicious PowerShell execution by a certain user, we could then pivot across there and see, okay, I want to see everything that user is doing. So what we found here is this 2019 server has got RDP enabled. So the next thing that I'd look at here is, okay, so is anyone actually using that RDP connection? So I have a query here to pull back information about active RDP connections. So I'm running it against the same machines again. And I can see that indeed this 2019 VM does have an RDP connection. As you can see here, I can then pivot across this to other queries as well. So this is where the power of Live Discover comes in. It gives you that extra visibility across your estate. However, this is great that you know you need to remediate something, but at the moment, especially in the COVID world, we're all working from home. The servers are in a different building, potentially in a different region. All your users are external. Yes, okay, you have ways of connecting and using your own remote management tools, but if there's an active threat on your network and you remote into a machine, there's actually a risk of that threat jumping up the pipe to your home machine or to the business machine you're using at home. So Sophos have created something to get around that, actually, where we have introduced this live response functionality. So I mentioned right at the beginning of this that Central can be protected by multi-factor authentication. And this is one of the features that requires multi-factor authentication for you to be able to access. You also need to be logged in as a super admin. And the reason for this is that by opening a live response session onto this server, you are creating a secure tunnel to a command line shell on there. And not only are you doing that, you are then logged into that server as system. So within here, you can do anything you want. You can open PowerShell if you want, and you can run some PowerShell commands. Additionally, if we take our remote desktop scenario, so we know there's an OpenRDP connection on here. We can see it there. We can see that session 1 has been logged into via the administrator account. We know that we don't want that, so we can kill that session. We can see that session is gone, but that doesn't remediate the problem that there was indeed a remote connection here and RDP is enabled. So you can create some playbooks, you can copy and paste into this terminal. We can see here that that remote connection is allowed. So we can just as easily run a command to disable that. And we can then query and we can see that that has now been disabled. But because we're not logged in via RDP ourselves, we don't get disconnected. As long as this machine has got an internet connection and can connect to Sophos Central, we can maintain connectivity here. Additionally, we can also ping information to users if you want to leave them a message, but the user doesn't even need to authenticate this. The user may not know that you're doing anything. So if you need to uninstall what is something that the user installed, or you want to see what they're doing on the machine, we can easily pull back what is going on. We can terminate services and do anything that a system administrator would be able to do. So obviously that's powerful, and we want to make sure that it's used properly. So all within this reporting piece that we talked about earlier, we have an audit log. So everything within Sophos Central is audited. So anything that a user does is logged. And additionally with live response, which we've added recently, we actually have full audit logs for live response. So we can see here that we connected in and they take a little bit of time to render, but we can download a session log for that live response session. And we can just open it with any text viewer and see the commands that were run. So that is fully audited to ensure that you've got compliance and anything else that needs to be covered has been. So I appreciate that's a very quick tour around InterceptX and EDR. If you've got any questions at all, please feel free to reach out via your account manager and we can get those questions answered for you. We look forward to welcoming you to the Sophos family soon.